Today on Primetime Local News, I'm joined by local award-winning Métis author Shelly and Wieringa, who's actually launching a new podcast via TELUS's Story Hive collaboration. Welcome to the show, Shelly.
Well, thanks for having me.
So, for people who are unfamiliar with your book, it's called I Never Lied, and it's an in depth look at some of the struggles and traumas that you faced throughout your childhood. But with the podcast, you're kind of looking to take things a step further. So, to open things up here, would you say that the podcast is kind of a means of creating a more conversational tone to go about this subject matter, or what can you tell our viewers about the podcast series?
So the first three podcasts that I did were strictly based on bringing in a private investigator who could prove the story and what I had written in my book. And then it was the next two were based on the abuse that I went through as a child. These next six are going to be a little bit different because I want to talk about what the deep-rooted adverse effects to adults are of having gone through childhood trauma. We're going to do sort of like a ripple effect. So my children who are now 36 and 39 are going to have a chance to share what they went through when I was going through the trauma and trying to recover from it and how that's affected them in their adult life. I also have a niece who is going to be also discussing her experience having been raised by my sister who was also abused and how that reflects in her being a parent today. I think it is so important that we talk about this stuff because one of the things that stopped me from healing myself for so many years was the guilt that I carried for all the mistakes that I had made. Once people realize, and once I realized that that's a natural reaction to what I went through, it became easier to get through it and to start my recovery process.
And because of the raw or maybe uncomfortable subject matter that this podcast contains, it might be harder for some people to invest in a piece of media like this. But could I just get you to speak to, I guess, the importance or the opportunity, I guess, that it creates to educate people who haven't been through abuse?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I've come across so many times when I've been out public speaking or hosting workshops is that if you, number one, the stats in Canada are 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 boys before the age of 12 will be abused. If you aren't a person who was abused, you're definitely going to know somebody who was. And it helps when you educate yourself, it'll help you to gain a bigger understanding of the person you're dealing with. And it also will teach you how to help that person recognize what's going on for them. It is very important, I think.
Just quickly before we go, for podcast listeners out there who might be interested in getting their ears on your material, where's the best spot for them to go?
They can actually find it on my website, which is www.shellyann.ca. Under the podcast page, they're all there.
Thanks so much for your time, Shelley.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me.